Welcome back to What Have You. I'm Rachel Jankovic.
I'm Becca Merkel.
And here we gather without any massive lapses.
It's been a week.
Yeah, so we better hustle and get this up there so that we haven't lapsed too badly.
I'm just going to say right at the front end, usually I try to put my phone on airplane mode or something because calls and texts.
It's just because we want to be really professional.
Everything.
We want to be, because of our professional ways, we try to not take calls in the middle of the podcast. But
today I'm not going to because I have a son working somewhere who doesn't have a phone and he has to borrow somebody's to call me and I don't want him stranded in the countryside.
So, brace yourselves. We're going to do other...
We may be spliced up in multiple recordings here. Who knows? Anyway, it's October. It's blowing like a crazy thing outside.
Because we're up on top of my hill where the blowing gets going.
Where the clouds are just streaking across the sky.
I'll tell you that we had one night up here where it was a genuine, windstorm happening.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty restless night. I was like, wow. Not because it wasn't, scary or anything. It was just
rowdy.
So loud.
I'm impressed, actually, because you have new windows, and see
it wasn't that. A big part of it, the wind, you could hear a lot of the wind, that's true, but
I just mean
you also
we have a visitor.
What?
Can I go?
No, you gotta go. Are you too cold?
Yeah.
Well, you should get a bigger coat on. Get your green coat.
Anyway, the thing is my wood windows are wood and they rattle.
Mine weren't doing that.
They're just my bedroom window right now is just making a lot of a clatter.
There our kitchen exhaust, the hood exhaust, we're going to need to do some intervention around that. I don't know what's happening. The way that it is in the exhaust pipe. There's it's like
you
a
just
flue.
Hear it. Yeah.
It's like a flue that I imagine opens when necessary, except for in high winds. It was essentially like if we had hired someone to come bang pots and pans in the kitchen all night. And our bedroom is right above the kitchen, so it was noticeable that there was a lot of activity in the kitchen. And in other windy days, like in the daytime when you're in there, it does kind of feel like... There was one time that I went to check, is wildlife moving into the hood? Is there a family of raccoons getting in there?
I have to tell you that happened.
There wasn't.
No, we did have it happen one time. It was in our previous house, and it happened on New Year's Day when we all had the flu. Ben had the flu, I had the flu, the children had the flu. It was New Year's. It was outrageous. And we still don't know if it was a bird or a squirrel, but somehow it had made its way all the way through the ductwork from the outside, all the way down the ductwork, and then fell down the chute into the hood because you could hear it right above the stove, fluttering around or banging around. We don't know.
Do I need to answer a question? Hi.
You guys don't have a ladder we could use here, do you?
Yeah. I think we do. How big do you need?
Not super big. 6
Okay. Yeah. I think I know where there is one. Awesome.
Well, guys, Rachel's been called away by her sheetrock mutters, so I'm just going to go ahead and pause this thought, and we'll resume in a minute. She's back, guys, and let it be known that so far all the interruptions have been Rachel's. Okay.
I want to say that I myself was interrupted this morning making my first ever batch of English muffins because it's a teacher work day. Yeah. So the kids were home today. And I thought, why not? I never do those because they take... Every time I look at the recipe, I'm like, that's 12 hours of standing at a griddle.
Yeah.
To make enough of those.
Yeah.
Because when it's 7 to 8 minutes per side, I'm like, what are we talking? That's not it.
I know.
That doesn't work. But I made them this morning, and the kids loved them. But also, I was still in my pajamas doing that when the mutters, the guys that came to touch up some mudding concerns in the house came, which is not my favorite time to receive visitors. But now they have saran wrapped off all of the staircase, which is awkward on a day when all the kids are at home.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, but I have to finish telling you this because...
Yeah, sorry.
So the animal, whatever it was, a badger perhaps, fell down into our kitchen hood. And so we could hear it, and there was like no way of getting to it without going up into the attic and like belly crawling around and disassembling the entire ductwork, which Ben had to do with the flu. So he's like ill with the queasies, and the only flashlight that we could find was it was one of the
This
kids.
is before cell phone.
Yeah.
Before.
And it was a little
It was
plastic
like the happy
hippo. Where you push this button and its mouth opens and the light shines
And it
out.
makes like a hippo noise.
Yeah. It was one of the kids, and so Ben's like he's like army crawling with the flu in the attic with a hippo flashlight, and he has to take
could
apart.
not be better than that.
No, take apart the entire dang thing all the way like out to the. It was a long stretch of ductwork, and he gets it all disassembled, and the thing is still down in the hood and still wouldn't come out. So then I think we had to like lower a rope down into it to see if it was something that could climb. I don't know. And then all of a sudden, it was gone. And we don't know what it was, where it went, what it did after that time. It was just, but then we have like a dismembered duct in the attic.
But at least you have a happy hippo flashlight to keep you company.
And it was on New Year's Day, so you're already sick on a holiday, and then you add that on top of it. It was.
Oh, that's really good.
Anyway.
Was that the year? We had one year where everybody got the stomach bug before Christmas.
It was that year because
Because you're still going it.
But I wasn't. I had morning sickness so bad that I had an IV on Christmas Day, like the hospital that year. And it was like I was crazy morning sick, and then we don't know if I had the flu on top of it because it's impossible to know when you're that morning sick.
I think we had.
And then Dad was sick.
It was that year.
Yeah, it was.
Because you had an IV on Harrison Street.
Oh. No, you're right.
Merging sick Christmases of all time.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, because
we did. I will
it was
say
a different year.
The
It was
flu,
a different New
there
Year's
was one
sickness.
flu
You
year
have
that
another.
the eve
You have
of,
another child here.
The eve of Christmas Eve, Luke and I passed each other in the hall, carrying buckets of vomit.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes.
I don't think there's one of us.
Do you have the remote?
Yeah, but she's not coming.
Where is she?
Down there.
Okay, go see if you can. You need to beep the button on the collar. So
I know,
just
okay.
go somewhere she'll want to come with you. See if you can get her to go. Nothing like a day at the park at our house.
No. This is why we often feel like we really should go behind Goodwill, where the only people to disrupt us are cops.
But in this case, it'd be weird to leave my kids home with the mutters. So,
I know.
Anyways.
All
All that to say. It's been
different Christmases, we've been sick differently.
Yeah,
That's
we've
true.
done different kinds of special.
Yeah.
We've done it all.
Anyway.
On Christmases. So,
I'm in the midst of having to plan the menu for the Reformation Banquet, which is next Friday. So now we're down to 1 week from today. And I don't know. It's like I made a chorizo stuffed pork loin last night to test it out to see if I liked it. And it's very hard to know if I liked it. I didn't particularly. It was really good. I mean, it was really good. I say after I'm like, I didn't like it at all. It was really good. I don't know.
my father-in-law grills a pork loin with apples in
but
between
I
it.
can't grill for
No, I know,
that
but I
many.
meant apples.
Another
in
one,
between it.
guys. Another one.
Whatever, it's the day.
So Derby's collar's out of battery. We got her to come, but the beeper won't work.
It won't even turn on.
Well, her collar it beeps, but when you try to
If her collar
Check
beeps,
it.
then she'll obey you, I think.
no, but then if you try to use the remote to beep her, it doesn't work. It doesn't do anything.
Where's the remote?
What, Lena?
Okay, we'll bring her back up and put her in the house. Maybe take the leash if you need
yeah.
it. This is the chicken killer.
Yeah.
We can't have the chicken killer
No.
in an unbeepable situation. She needs to have the power of the beep
Indeed.
in her life.
Indeed.
So sorry for all the
Anyway,
interludes.
all I'm saying is I've been working on this pork loin question, like, do I want to make a bourbon butter glazed chorizo stuffed pork loin? You make it and then you eat it and you're kind of like, blah. But if somebody else made it and you ate it, maybe you would like it. It's actually a rule of thumb,
though, that whatever you make, you'll feel blah about.
Yeah.
You can't know.
Yeah.
When you feed a big group, by the time you get to eating it, you don't like it anymore.
I'll tell you, though, what's really good. I roasted it with, I chopped carrots, parsnips, sweet potato, and apple, and red onion.
Yeah.
And roasted it with the pork. And that is a really yum, very fall kind of combo.
Yeah.
For roasted veg. Throwing Granny Smith apples in there.
That sounds like a good idea.
It was really good, yeah. I approved of that. But the pork is itself a question.
You did what? Approved.
You can't make fun. I'm still coughing.
I approved of that.
I'm still hacking away, but not as bad as last week, you guys.
No,
not as bad.
Success is being had.
Yeah. Anyhow, but the problem, what I'm trying to tell you is, I was doing this big sample run of all these recipes. So I'm trying out a chocolate terrine last night and a chorizo stuffed pork loin and the roasted veg and a salad recipe. But Ben's out of town. Knox, well, he's just crazy busy and working, so he wasn't going to be there for dinner anyway. Then my 2 college girls had to go to a meeting, and then my high school girl had to go to a class thing, so it was Judah and me with a large chorizo stuffed pork loin and roasted veg and salad and a chocolate terrine. And actually,
I bet Judah liked that.
We had a good time because we sat down and I'm like, Judah, tell me about it. What are your thoughts? And he's actually quite good at articulating his feelings about the food. So it was good. He was kind of like, well, I actually think the chorizo is fine, but I think a different sausage would be better in here. Like he was quite, he was good.
Good. Wow.
Anyway, that's what I've been up to, and I still don't know what I'm going to do about the pork loin, and I don't really care. That's the problem I'm facing.
Heart of darkness there is when you just can't care anymore.
And I think I told you this yesterday, but when you've done something like this a couple of times, I feel like there's not enough adrenaline to motivate you.
But Becca, I think we should let the record show that Becca is actually an adrenaline junkie.
I am not.
You are too. In terms
not.
Yes, it is typically adrenaline is how you motivate.
Well, I hate to say that you might be onto something.
No, Becca does. I'm just saying that it is more of a, like, some people get the rush of joy and pleasure through overly preparedness.
Yeah.
So some people are like, nothing is as pleasurable to them as having packed just what was needed in the cooler. Like that moment is the moment where they're like,
here's the problem though, Rachel. Here's
the
problem is in my head. I'm that person in my head.
I don't think I'm either person. I don't think I've ever prepared a cooler very well.
No, you know my feelings about built-ins. Like, I like to feel like I have prepared.
Right, you want to have
the
thought
exact
through
spot for my potatoes.
Like, if Becca could pack her own, like those little ketchup pouches? If she could pack her own version of that with a cute label, there would be so many things packed.
Rach, oh my goodness. I'm just having a memory of a really rogue craft that I did one time.
I think we were doing the podcast when you did this. With
No.
Carmex bottles? Yeah, you podcasted that.
No, that was a good idea.
My point is simply that Becca's skill set is running on adrenaline.
What
to
you're
do
saying
the
is
things.
my skill sets lie in extremes and not in the middle path of moderation. The thing is that the kids were really little, and we would go down to Boise to visit Ben's mom, and I would pack everybody's stuff in the most meticulous, ridiculous way you've ever heard about. So my favorite. Actually, this is a good tip now that I think about it. It's not how I pack anymore. I don't know. Maybe I just had more time or something. But I would pack each kid's outfit for every day, plus extras, plus if you had to go out for dinner or, whatever. But I would pack all of it into a bundle, wrap it in blue painter's tape. So it was like taped together in a bundle, and Sharpie on the top, Knox Tuesday, Knox Wednesday, Knox Thursday, you know, and it had socks and it had whatever. And
so
then
it wasn't exactly in a ketchup pouch, but it could have
but
been.
it was in the thick of that when I was packing in that way. That, you know, those shows where people have like a go bag where everything they need with their foreign currency and fake passport and I don't know what else is like just ready to grab and go. I had this idea that would be a good idea for all the toiletries that we might need on a trip to Boise. But I was sewing it in red canvas, I think. Like one of the kinds that would roll up and then you could unroll it and with that little hanger on top. But I had acquired every single little travel size thing that you might ever want. And then I, like, including the small bottle of Advil and the small hand lotion and the small wet wipes and the small Q-tips and whatever else. And I was sewing, like, individual custom-sized gusseted pockets out of clear plastic inside this thing so that you could tuck it in.
Well, let's just be real, because priorities. Because the things that really give joy are not.
With snaps. Yeah. Western snaps.
Things that really give us joy are not often the things that are really the most strategic.
But I didn't ever finish that, as I recall.
I have to say, though, this is the thing, and this is random, but when my kids were little, when my oldest kids were little, and it was an unmanageably large group of toddlers. Yeah. Like, really, like, wow, how will we then live with this situation? And I remember it making an enormous difference in our day if the kids' clothes were ready for the day early. Like, if they could, because it would involve me needing to locate all the component parts, you know? And so I made things that hung on the wall in the hall that had each kid's name on them and a pouch underneath it that I would put their clothes for the day in so that when they got up, they could grab their clothes and put them on.
See, so you have no high horse to sneer at me
and I feel like it had like it said something on top of it, but there was at the same time that I hung a clock. I bought a cheap clock somewhere, probably Walmart, popped the top off of it and took the minute hand off of it. I don't remember if I cut it or just took it off. You can, whatever. But, and then I put a new background under the numbers where I blocked out rest time and when lunch is and when snack time is, because then they would say, can we have something to eat? And I'd say, go look at the clock and see if it's snack time yet. And it turned out that it was a good way of deferring the all-day snack-a-thon. And also, I would do that with, I would give them, like, milk at a snack time, or maybe I didn't give them milk. Maybe I would only give them water, because this is a real practical thing to share with you all right now. But a lot of people, milk is good for kids, but you can also snack and milk them out of meals. Like, if I was drinking whole milk and eating a bunch of goldfish at 4, I don't know that I'd be ready to lay into dinner with an appetite.
It's true.
And if you want them to actually eat with the family, you probably shouldn't be plying them with Fig Newtons all day or whatever it is. So I would try to make it where I put their snack. I would give them it was a Dixie cup. I got Dixie cups because I would give them a Dixie cup full of milk and the snack. And I was like, this is your whole snack until dinner. Yeah. And that really was better than a run-on milk sentence all day. Yeah. Which turns out you can do. Yeah. When blinded by how many children there are asking for things, you can start topping off huge sippy cups of whole milk all the time. And so I, laid off of that.
Yeah. All I'm saying though, Rach, is that I feel like you with your custom outfit dispensers and me with my custom toiletry dispensers.
We run in different lines, but we overlap.
We overlap. And the thing is, like, part of me wants,
I like to maintain the moral high ground.
Yeah, you like to.
Over you're doing ridiculous things.
Yeah,
but
you say that.
I liked it.
You actually have no moral high ground.
I just need to get this out on the table that I want to have it.
I'm just saying that there's a side of me that, yes, runs on the adrenaline, and the other side of me that wants to never have adrenaline but have a perfectly packed toilet toiletry bag, just ready, just right there
Little
for
bit of
whenever
both.
you want to
A
go.
little bit of both. Okay,
Yeah.
I have to say, now we've talked about boring things. We should
We
merge
have.
into napkins and tin cans just to kind of, just to bring everyone up to speed on our life.
I could regale you with why I think the chorizo wasn't quite right.
That's all right. Okay, here's the question that I said we were going to talk about, and I think it's a really good question, so that's why.
Okay.
I have to
I'm
say
ready.
that first I'm gonna read part of this. Someone wants to hear about our thoughts on introversion.
Okay.
I used to be quite comfortable labeling myself an introvert, but in recent years have grown increasingly uncomfortable about how popular it is and how it's framed as an unchangeable facet of self, while all descriptions end up sounding really selfish. And the idea of basically, is it an okay thing to just be like, this is how I am? You know, like
Right.
that's how it is. And then she said, you see lists of these things, but not lists that are fleshed out biblically about how you should go forth,
Okay.
whatever. It's so she's saying practically. Then this part I think is the part that. Anyways, y'all always sound like you're just going nonstop, pouring yourselves out and then pouring some more, and like the widow's flask never running dry. I like to just say, I don't know that, I think we would say what we sound like is probably apparently missing.
I would
some
just
steps.
refer everyone back to the recording of you and Luke in the parking lot.
Yeah, exactly. I would do that for sure. I liked somebody's comment about that they were like, this is a great one quote from Yoo-Hoo that's been around, is that faithfulness does not feel like what it's accomplishing.
Yeah.
Someone was like, apparently it doesn't sound like it either.
Yep.
What do you think we should make for dinner? We're having a whole passel of people tomorrow. I don't know. What do you want to do? Okay, let's see. It's very inspiring, and I can see the biblical reasoning there. The thing is, when I go nonstop, I literally burn out. Sometimes I get migraines that last a week, which is not a sin issue, and sometimes it is a sin issue, like getting crabby and irritable with my family. I find it easier. So this part I think is interesting. I find it easier not to sin when I keep a slower pace. Also, it does no one any good for me to get migraines. So I guess I'm asking, how do you pour yourself out without falling into sin and not using introversion as an excuse, etc.? But when it's grumpiness, I always think I ought to be able to do all the things without getting grumpy, and yet I do get grumpy, which is very Romans 7, isn't it? Isn't it 7? The things I do,
so.
the things I don't want to do,
Yeah.
I do, and the things that. So then maybe I think I'd best pull back from doing so much, etc., etc. I like this part. If your right arm offends you, cast it off. So if my overmuch busyness is offending me, cast off the busyness. Except for I would say amputate the grumpy attitude first. Anyways.
Well, except for that it doesn't say just...
Be busy.
No, I mean, the verse doesn't say, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut off the sin. It says, cut off your hand, you know.
Well,
So-
right, but it's saying cut off the thing close to you, which is the grumpiness, not the schedule.
Sure, but I mean,
Yeah.
in that verse, it's actually saying cut off the thing that causes you to sin. But
No,
I think
it's not, because what causes your right hand?
if your hand causes you to sin, you cut your hand off. It doesn't say,
Yeah.
we'll just stop sinning. But the point of that whole verse is your hand doesn't cause you to sin, does it? It's your heart.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the...
Exactly.
That's
So, okay, then this is a long message, but I think a lot of the question is interesting, like it's good context for what I think we should talk about. So,
Okay.
Basically, I don't like the typical advice given to introverts.
No.
In a homeschool moms Facebook group I'm in, I saw a question that sums up my concerns. I'm feeling really overwhelmed with all the get-togethers, family things, parties, field trips, neighbors, kids. I feel like I need to give and do, and then I come home and I'm tired and grouchy, and I don't feel like I'm able to live the life that I want. I cannot seem to get anything done. I feel like I require,
Is this the same question or different
This is
question?
somebody, she's talking about, this is a
Okay.
question that was asked to a group, a homeschool group.
okay.
And then everyone everyone says, all the comments are, girl, yes, you need to recharge, set boundaries, and be your best, beautiful introvert self, and bubble bath time, and it's not sinful or selfish to take care of your mental health, and you have to do boundaries and push people out of your life.
Can I just...
I had a year of saying no, and it was lovely. Or God promises us an abundant life. I forfeit that abundance when I am too busy. So basically all of these is kind of saying, whoa, way back till you're just having a quiet, you know what I mean? Like, whatever. And then she says, in the homeschool community, especially Charlotte Mason-esque corners, there's a lot of emphasis on quiet, gentle days at home. Virtually no extracurriculars, minimal doing anything besides habit training at school. This appeals to me on many levels. It sounds simpler than your way of running so hard you fall asleep half hanging off the bed with mud on your pants. But I'm continually challenged by your podcast and the way you seem to just do all kinds of things. Do all kinds of activities for your kids, sports, etc., and generally not doing the Charlotte Mason sit in the yard and do nature watercolors life I have previously found so appealing. This whole death by living thing intrigues and alarms me. I hear what you're saying, but it sounds completely exhausting to me. So as an introvert, not that I should actually put myself in that box, what does this death by living look like? What advice would you give the woman in my Facebook group, etc., etc.? So this is what I'm trying to say is I think it is a well-rounded, big question.
Sure. Yeah. And I have a couple things. One of them is, I guarantee you, if I was to take a little, are you an introvert test? I totally am. Like, I am very sure I would score on that subject, but I don't. Like, I don't take the test. But mostly because I'm terribly bored by the fascination with plunging around in your own personality. I just feel like that, what good does that do anyone? But I'm very
let's
sure
be real, we just had a big talk about our own personality types.
Yeah, but not in that, like, I need a label and I need to, you know. Anyway, but I'm very...
You got a label. Adrenaline junkie.
Adrenaline junkie introvert, maybe. No, I think, like, you know all those little things that people post about, would you rather stay home or would you rather go out to the party that everyone... I would pick stay home every single time.
I think that I probably used to be an extrovert, but on anything like that, I would be like...
But...
Bless me, of course I want to stay home and read a book rather than...
Yeah. Anyway, all I'm saying is I don't think that, obviously who you are and what your strengths and gifts are and everything ought to play into how you live. I think you should cut with the grain of yourself. But I also think that there's a lot of excuse making, but that's all contained in the question itself.
Yeah, but one thing that I would say about this is that there have been really radically different phases of life for me. And when your kids are all really little, I was really just at home. We were not doing lots of hospitality because the work of just having a bunch of little kids at home was intense enough to last a lifetime. At that time, I probably rarely, but more often than I do now, went out with friends to, like, get a coffee or like have it like in the evening, get out of the house and do something else than the little ecosystem at home that was intense. That was a time when taking my children to school, like the work of loading babies up into the car to drive a kid somewhere, almost killed me. And we bowed out of things that seemed like seemed like the there were activities where I would be like, this is not worth the effort. Like, this is not worth our effort. And a lot of that,
it's always,
we told our kids.
Always triage.
Always, yeah. So in those times of life, we were not putting our kids in all the sports. Like, actually, what happened for us was we pretty selectively sport with our kids until they are old enough to be on the, like, when it's the junior high school team, we said, we'll let you do it. Well, the bulk of our kids now are in junior high and high school sports. So now is the reckoning for all the time when we said not now. You know, like, but my point is that there was a lot of time when we had nothing going in the evenings. We were not inviting lots of people into our house. We were not, like, that was a different phase of life. And that even though the phase has changed and now we do a lot more hospitality and we do a lot more, like, things have changed, the sports and hospitality and whatever. One thing that hasn't changed is that we've always paced ourselves, because the thing that you have to recognize is you can't actually run full speed indefinitely.
No.
So there are different ways of having a run. Some of them is intervals, where you sprint and then you actually rest for a while, and then you sprint and then you rest for a while.
The other thing I identify with sort of in that question is I do feel like I can crash hard after.
Becca does, actually.
I feel like...
We call it Becca's blue screen of death mode. But what I was going to say is that Becca does you do the intervals, which is the sprint, crash, sprint, crash. That is what Becca does.
That's the story of my life.
And I would say that I don't probably crash as much, but I do mini crashes. Mini being like the day after a big push is something that I'm actively working on, how to approach that day in a way that it is still productive and you're turning it around, because if there's not something happening right after it, it's very hard to get the adrenaline to care. You're like, okay, I made it through that, and now I'm like, and so like what I will do is just be like, so the Monday morning or when there's a lot of stuff to mop up, it's very basic, low key, sort of like just keep moving, keep working on, I'm not being wildly productive all the time. And the reason I was bringing up the reason that who are they missing?
They've got one on their back. Moses is being piggybacked.
Oh, thanks for... Well, I was like, we're short a kid. So my kids are walking up Nate's
farm
hill
field
across the street. So anyways, the thing that I was going to say is the different styles of running should be determined by calling and body type and how, like, and so when my kids were really little, that was a marathon. That was a different kind of thing. And saying no to activities or like having people over all the time, we were not very social. I opt out of play dates all the time. There was a phase where I would meet friends at the park. Like I would walk my kids to the park and the kids would play there for a while. But we didn't ever prioritize play dates. We were very...
But I think too, though, in the question about like the sort of idealized... quiet time at home.
Yeah.
That could also easily be provoking, I would think, because it's very hard to achieve that. And if that's your ideal, then at least I could picture myself being endlessly frustrated that I couldn't have that perfect watercolor moment all the time. Like occasionally.
I actually think it's like a different version of being health obsessed, where you're always doing toxin purges and constantly, like, where you're just not thinking of your life as a tool, sort of like that. And the older my kids have gotten, I think God naturally brings you through different phases where you see different things because of how life unfolds. And I remember a phase where we really became way more aware of our own mortality and how fast it was all going. Like, where it no longer felt like we're going to be in this phase for a lifetime, and all of a sudden you see how fleeting it is. And that changed our approach to a lot of things. But it was because we had popped out the other side of a very intense all baby phase. So I guess the thing I'm trying to say is, I don't think we're supposed to be doing one thing. I think we're all supposed to be running faithfully.
Yep.
And that it has to be really responsive to your duties, which is, your children, your husband, your family, and your abilities, which is your natural inclinations and whatever. And then through all of that, God is still such a wonderful coach to us, to convict us of things along the way, where you see the things that need to be mortified, but you won't see them through imitating a friend who has a totally different
But I think, though, too, like, just asking yourself maybe the bigger questions of what is the purpose of all of this? Because, like, honestly, what is the chief end of man is not to have a pleasant time and enjoy ourselves forever.
Yeah, and I've been
is
seeing...
to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And so I think that there should always be an outward focus, not a what can I do to make my own self feel comfy.
What's my happiest habitat is not really our question. It's what's the most glorious exporting I could be doing here.
Right.
And I guess I would say, though, that a lot of the stuff, like, I think it makes total sense to be trying to, like, I've said on the podcast before, I would try to time myself to be, like, at 2 somewhere. I try to sit down and put my feet up before this rush is coming, because I know how hard it is for me to handle if I do this whole sprint all day while the kids are gone, and then I go pick them up, and I all of a sudden, because I've been in the car, I'm so tired, and then they're all there, and it's like the noise level is way up, and the mess level is way up, and I am frazzled. And it's actually way better for me to, like, take a minute, get a grip, think about what, you know, like.
And I think if you can figure out hacks for yourself that to maximize
do it. But it doesn't end up being, I guess the thing I was trying to say is, me picking the kids up when I'm tired does in no way excuse me being short and grumpy with the kids, but me knowing how to prepare my heart so that I won't be short and grumpy with the kids is, like, by all means, do that.
And I do think, like,
but if it was to be ungodly is how you think you can prepare your heart, then it's not one of your choices.
And I think that people understand when we look at, like, athletics or something, people understand that when you are wanting to run a marathon, you have to train for it. You have to, like, pick goals, and you have to be strategic and figure out how you're going to do it. And I think similarly in the Christian life, if we know we're supposed to be running a race and we know that that's what we're supposed to be doing, then you should be strategic in how you're training for it. You shouldn't just decide,
you should also,
I'm not going to race. I'm going to sit on the side.
Right. And you should also trust God that He actually does the work that makes you more capable. Because if you are trying to glorify Him, if you are oriented towards that and you're trying to be obedient, that's that psalm that I love so much in Psalm 119. I will run after your commands, for you will enlarge my heart. And that process, and I love that it has become something of a life verse, I think, for me, is that in those moments where I feel horribly stretched or horrified by how much has to get done, or how much I feel like I'm not getting done, or whatever, those moments that we all know that feeling of, like, I am totally overwhelmed by this. And in those moments, I have tried to train myself to think of it as, it's okay. God is just enlarging your heart. Like, this is a moment where you say, thank you, Lord, that as I run after these commands, I know you will do the work of making my heart big enough to handle this. And He does. He keeps doing it.
And it is similar to, like, if, you know, somebody's trying to increase what their max bench press is. There's all sorts of ways that people work on that so that they can increase. Now, you can't just indefinitely increase your max. At some point, you're going to actually reach the max.
Yeah.
And you can't keep doing it without breaking, you know? And so there's no point in doing that.
And it's important to recognize what is the running is not being busy. It's glorifying God.
Yes.
So, like, as mothers of 5 and 7 children, we don't get to opt out of busyness.
No.
Like, I could not, and we'll just speak for myself. Becca probably, it'd be okay if she didn't do anything, but for me, I could not say, Lord, you've given me 7 children, and you've given me this house, and you've given me this calling, and also to glorify you best, I'm going to not do my duty by any of it. You know, not going to follow through helping the kids with this and doing that and making, you know, like, no, I have duties that involve busyness. And so for me, it is far more about changing my desires to try to match what God has called me to. Because what doesn't bless anybody in my family is for me to sit around fantasizing about a quiet, serene lifestyle.
But I think because you have to have a bigger vision too of like, what are we put on this earth for? We are supposed to be...
It's not leisure.
No, and we're supposed to be actually making a difference in the world. And
you don't want to waste your whole life.
Right. And so to be a quiet little pod that is never disrupted and that nobody ever notices because you're a quiet little pod and you've made no difference in the world.
And I've said this on the podcast before, but it's applicable now. I think all the time that, like, when you're born, it's like a rock was thrown. Your life is now thrown. You are hurling through the air towards a pond, right? And I think all the time, and even pray, like, Lord, as my life is flying past me, like, make me bigger and heavier and splashier. Like, because when I go through to the other side, I want to have left as big of a mark for the gospel, for the kingdom, as I possibly could have.
Yeah.
And because that is what I really desire, it obviously does shape your decisions about what you value.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't make it then my year's goal to have a little hidey hole wherein I don't do stuff.
Right.
Like, why would I do that?
Back to the introvert thing, though, as well. I think that instructions for introverts, I'm not denying that there are introverts, and I don't think that they should be extroverts. Like, God made people different, and I think that that's all just part of his creation. He has lots of diversity in the kinds of humans that he makes. And that is the beauty of the body of Christ, is everybody's different. But I do think that nobody is excused from working, and nobody is excused from contributing to the function of the body. And it doesn't matter if you're not the mouth, you know,
right.
Like, that's okay, but you aren't allowed to cut yourself off and be huffy at the rest of the body. And that tends to be what, actually, I haven't seen as much of it lately. It feels like a couple years ago, there was this constant barrage of instructions for how everyone ought to treat introverts.
Yeah, but it was also like, I remember getting messages from people like, mothering is just easier for you because you're not an introvert. So for me, it's actually... Yeah, but... I'm actually personally
But here's
being
what
tried.
I think is really, really funny about that is when you have introverts posting these things. Here's how everyone ought to treat me so as to not...
I'm going to just check if this is a reason that they need me.
Oh,
Keep talking.
I'm not going to keep talking. She's gotten out of the car again, guys. We're just going to pause it. We're going to pause.
She's back.
She's back.
Just hoping that it wasn't
nothing
like
befell
we've been injured and we're running back to get mom.
I just have a metaphor here. When introverts were posting the lists of here's how everyone should treat me in public, imagine a different one. Swap out. I think you have a visitor here.
Hold on. You guys can go turn on the electric kettle so you guys can have hot chocolate. Fill it up with water. I think I'm going to get a succession of visitors.
I think you probably are.
Yeah, what, bud? Okay, I told him to go turn on the electric kettle so you guys can have hot chocolate.
Anyway, imagine if it was a man who was posting, everyone, I am prone to lust. Here is how you have to dress if you are around me.
Alert,
everyone.
When you greet me, I would like you to do it in this way so that I am not...
I would like you to wear...
to lust after you.
Puffy parkas and snow pants. If you could wear that whenever you're around me.
I remember seeing a graphic about an introvert that was like, and it's the most testy, lame thing you've ever seen in your life. It was like a cartoon. And there was some kind of a like, first you have to, I don't want to be alone. I just don't want to be pressured to interact with you. And it was like, so I want you to, it was sort of like assess the situation where I am before greeting me.
So that's kind of
Before,
like... Yeah.
before you check if you should say, hey, how are you doing?
I
would like you to assess my needs. And the idea there being, it is such a, well, really, it's just victim culture. It's like, if we all think of ourselves as being the most important unit of humanity, well, then this is the kind of thing that will happen. I just
like the idea of a man posting, like, women.
Yeah.
I want to be around women, but I don't want you to stumble me, so I'm going to need you
I'm less inclined to this, but it's actually different because it's never about how to deal with an introvert so that they don't indulge themselves. It's how to help them indulge themselves. So it'd be worse. It would be, I struggle with lust, and so therefore I would like you all to wear lower cut items.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you're
not hide me from my sin, but rather help me in it.
Yeah. But see, what I'm trying to say is it's not necessarily a sin to be an introvert. God can, God made you that, fine. But I do think that
I like that. So God made you fine.
God made you fine. It's all right. But I do think that the obsession with, now I get to indulge myself crazy amounts and everyone else has to accommodate themselves to me.
And that's especially vicious in a mother.
Yeah.
Because that's not your job, is not to flourish and your own self up.
You know, like, you don't want to say being an introvert is a sin, but it's definitely going to come with a whole lot of temptations.
As does being an extrovert.
As does being a human.
And it turns out that's the real sucker punch right there, is that we're all set up for perpetual temptation. Of
course, we should all be considering others to be more important than themselves. So if you're spouse or your sister or somebody is an introvert, yes, treat them kindly, and you should be looking out for their interests. But if you are an introvert, you should be looking out for the interests of your extrovert husband or sister or whatever. Like, if everyone was setting aside their own interests and looking out for the interests of others, then we would have a lot more harmony in the world.
And it's very true. And I think I think one of the things is that idea that we all have somehow, that if the world was sinless, that it wouldn't have been work. That even that getting things to go, like that the goal should be to get to a place where you're not having to expend yourself,
where you're coasting.
But the reality is that the goal, like the message in the question when she brought up the oil in, like, being poured out continually, it's like, that's the thing, is that we're not trying to be a vessel full of oil, and we're not trying, what we're trying to be is the vessel through which God pours his own grace through us onto those around us also, and that's going to not feel like a relaxing life, but to see the beauty in that. And I want to go back to this, my vision for that has not changed from when I had a bunch of little kids and I said no to pretty much everything and I stayed home all the time. Like, at that time, it was all of the pouring out that I could possibly pour out was happening at home and
you were not saying no to everything because you were having a nice, luxurious time with your feet up.
No, I was saying no to everything because we were breathlessly and panickingly trying to get a grip.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but it wasn't, my point is that many people equate, like, they equate it with, like, your, I would say in that time, it's not all of your social engagements or how many activities you're doing or how, but it is about, are you fruitfully laying out your life? And I was.
And I think, too, there are definitely ways of figuring out how to maximize yourself. And sometimes that means, you know what, I really have to make sure that I get whatever, this rest. I can't max out. I can't, like, if I'm down with a migraine for a week, that doesn't do anybody any good. So I'm going to have to try to be strategic and figure out how I can do it. But we know, if we're honest with ourselves, we know the difference between being strategic in our rest in order that we can run farther and faster, and being strategic with our rest so that we can get out of more work.
Okay, and an example of this would be going into a hole of the internet where you just look at other people's photos is often done as a kind of like, I just need a break. you know what I mean? Like, I just need a second. But it is not refreshing. Like,
which part do you
No,
mean?
I'm talking about, like, going mentally vacant in some way.
Yeah, sure.
Or, like, I just need a break, so I'm going to watch a show in the middle of the day. You don't come out of that in a, like, can't wait to bless my family.
Right.
I am so encouraged.
Yeah.
And when my kids were really little and I was at home all the time, and I was very at home, focused totally on the home, that was a time when there was a lot, the ways that I found to vent my own, like, I would say in a way, to encourage myself. I looked for the ways that I could do that would also be blessing my family. And at that time, I feel like I used that time to really lay a foundation, like one of the big ways, lay a big foundation in family traditions and joys. Mm-hmm. So, like, I am not now making advent calendars and worrying about that, but it was a real part of my life at that time that I knit 24 mittens to make the advent calendar that we put up every year now. And I did like things like I would go on the journey to figure out what are our favorite Christmas foods, what are the things that I want to do every year. So a lot of those traditions we tried in those years, and we didn't stick with them. Like, some of them we did one time and then never again, or we did whatever. But it was the time where I tried a lot of things, and we found the things that mattered to us. And I knit a lot then, but I only knit. I remember moving it into being like, I knit for my children, I knit Christmas stockings, I knit, and those were just things. It's like you laid a foundation for a home that you were building with little people and little traditions and little ideas, and they have grown up now to be big enough to invite other people over. Yeah. But at that time, it was all just a foundation.
But, you know, I was just reading about that, was it a Kenyan guy who just broke the 2-hour marathon?
Disgustingly fast.
Ridiculous. But you're also reading about how he did it, and he didn't just hop out of bed one day and run a less than 2-hour marathon.
Turns out he's been doing this for a very long time.
And that, like, his race was absolutely thought through to the last detail and maximized so that he could do it. It was like they picked Vienna because it was the right altitude, you know, and it wasn't too hilly, and it was only an hour away in time zone from where he'd been training, and then he had pace cars at the exact right, you know, speed, and he had a little fleet of runners around him in a sort of aerodynamic pod to keep him, and then they had guys zooming out to give him gel liquid supplements and things. Like, he was, all of those little things he was doing was so that he could run a little bit faster. And so it's not like he needed to, like, no, I can't drink anything, I'm running. No, I can't have any help, I'm running. But everything that he was doing was in order that he could run faster. And I kind of think that if you're saying no to things, if you're backing out of things, if you're trying to pare down on things, if you're trying to be strategic on things, but it's so that you can maximize your effectiveness, that's fantastic. And if you're doing it in order that you could stay home in bed and not run at all.
I actually want to bring this up, is that calling it running is not our metaphor. That's a biblically inspired one.
Exactly.
And the whole let us run with endurance the race that is set before us is that, why do we need endurance? Because it's not a little Charlotte Mason tea party all the time, right? You don't need endurance to live a life of incredible leisure. You need endurance to do the hard things and to push through things. And fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. But one of my favorite things about this, I can get weird about this, so I'll try to not do that, is that Hall of Fame, you know, that goes through all of these people. But then he says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. And you think, you know, when you read, I was just telling you yesterday about my fun times with, you know, reading Evidence, not seeing how much I love her. Yeah. You think, so here's a glorious saint that's gone on before. What about Sarah? You know, like, what about Rebecca and Rachel and all of these people, Tamar, these women of bizarre and incredible faith in other times? He's actually saying, these are your pace setters. Yep. He's actually saying, you know, you're talking about that marathon guy. He's saying, look at this Hall of Fame of faith. And recognize that these are the people who are cheering you on and running alongside of you and want to see you glorify God, using your life for His glory, running faithfully. And I think that I love that, because you think it's not like you want to say, if you read a biography of an incredible woman like Katie Luther, or these women that did remarkable things for the kingdom, Corrie ten Boom, and all of these remarkable people, we tend to think like we're a different species than they are.
Yeah.
But they're actually the people who delight to see you working hard for the kingdom, and who are, that's what He explains to us. This is our cloud of witnesses. And you think, are these the people you want to have cast an eye over your day's schedule? Do you know what I mean? You'd be like, because that's the part that really reveals your heart, I think. Because you would think like, if, oh my word. Well, that was a rich sight. Yes. No, I don't have popsicles, but hot chocolate.
He's in
I
shorts.
said cocoa is fine.
Shorts, guys, and a dinosaur hat.
It's a shark.
A shark hat.
A cord? Okay, thank you. Here, wait. I gotta take your picture for the podcast. Hold on. Back up a little bit and hold still. These ladies are gonna want to know what just came out. All right, love ya.
But
so what I was gonna say is, though, that, and this is what I think reveals your heart, is you think, would you like to sit down with Katie Luther and trying to think, Corrie ten Boom, this Darlene Diebler, Rose, who else could we get together? Would you like to sit down with them over coffee and be like, I need ideas for how I can do more? Like, tell me, what can I do? Do you see me being really productive? What looks like it could be improved? He's got no chance opening that door in the wind.
In the wind, couldn't get it.
Okay, so anyways, my point is, would you want their input to maximize your own running? Or would you be like, stop it, I don't want to be a runner?
Yeah.
Like, don't put me in this world of women of faith. Like, don't put me in this place where I need to lay my life out for the kingdom.
And I think maybe sometimes there are people who are more naturally, like, Bilbo was at the Tookish side that sort of flared up just a tidge and got him out there on that adventure, and then he wished it hadn't, but it was too late.
Dang it, I'm off now.
And I feel like some ladies need to try to find the Tookish side.
It's the watership down. You need to ask the Lord. You need to ask the Lord to flush you out of your rabbit holes and into some kingdom work. Because the reality is that you maybe are at home because you're doing the hardest race you could be doing.
Exactly.
And you're busy at home. And maybe you're hiding at home from doing the race.
It's also possible to be hiding from real work in the midst of a crazy amount of busyness.
Oh, yeah.
That's just as possible.
You can be keeping your schedule so crammed that you're never doing the things that aren't just kind of what you felt like doing right now.
Or just mediocre and not important. And so I do think that it's just, strategy is always going to play into it. It's just, what are you strategizing?
And a long view, because it is your whole life. So, for instance, when I said that we were laying the foundations of a future family that would be established, well, now we're just starting to be the established family that has done something.
Thing is, like, if you think about this race, and you know that you always trip and you always fall down when you encounter whatever, well, figure out a way around it. Figure out how to get yourself through it without splatting. And if the goal is to get through it, not to just sit down and quit, then I think that have a bubble bath, whatever.
One thing that I have found is that there's a real world of help in just acknowledging that this is going to be your life. Because sometimes it's little elements of discontent that have snuck in with, like, I don't choose this. Kind of. And when you just say, okay, so my life, if in my circumstances in this place, for me to be really faithful will look like, so there was that whole period of my life, being content with being at home, pouring into little people, not worrying about it, like that was faithfulness for a while. Well, now that wouldn't be faithfulness for me to just be not opening our home, not
Yeah.
being, you're like, now I'm called to something else. But in every phase, we have to actually be content with what we were called to do.
Yep.
And it's the same thing with being on a run. We keep talking about it. Sometimes you're going up hills. Sometimes you're in a flat section where it's relatively easy. Sometimes, you know, like things, sometimes you have a side ache even though the terrain is not bad. Sometimes you're like, I don't know why I feel like this, but I sure do feel like this. And I'm just saying that the one thing that we know is a given is that we're all called to run.
Yeah. This is true. And look what time it is. We've got to shut up.
Count down. 9, 8, we'll be at an hour even. And
Exactly.
our tip today. Do you have a tip? I had one. I had a tip.
Okay, give it
when
to us.
making biscuits for a large group, which you know you're not supposed to multiply because you mess up biscuits recipes. I've been experimenting with this. If you make multiple batches of cutting the fat into the thing, and I put it in my huge big stainless steel bowl. So I put like 5 batches of biscuits.
I multiply biscuits and it's fine.
Well,
Anyway, go ahead.
so I put them all in there, and then I do incorporate the liquid. So like knowing that you've cut the fat in evenly, and that and that baking powder and stuff is spread evenly.
Yeah.
Then you can add the buttermilk, or assuming you make buttermilk biscuits, because why would you not be making a buttermilk biscuit? And when you incorporate the liquid, then I lay it out on some pieces of my parchment, which parchment I buy at the restaurant supply store.
Yeah, we've
in
spoken
large
of this
sheets.
before, but it is a hot tip for
And
life.
then you lift up one side of it and fold it like a book. You know, you get that, you fold it up and pat it out and fold it up.
Yep.
And then cut it with a bench knife just into square biscuits, because then you are not making 7 tons of in-between pieces.
Yeah.
And bake them that way, and it's good. I have to say about the restaurant supply parchment, it's technically called like silicone pan liners or something. But Blair, my 4th grader, said the other day, apropos of nothing that I could see at the time, she just said, I hate Reynolds. And I said, what? I said, who is Reynolds? And she said, his parchment paper is the worst. She's like, I just like the brown stuff, because we'd run out of the box of natural pan liners.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Neither do any of us.
Look at, I recorded it. I asked my watch a question about 4th grader said the other day. Apropos, I said the whole thing, and then my watch said back, I don't know how to respond to that. And you guys, I think that'll be a wrap. I think we'll leave that in a Reynolds wrap for you all. Reynolds, we hate him. He doesn't do it for us.
He does not.
All right, until next time.
Everyone, have fun.
Bye.